Welcome to the show. I don't know what the show is going to be called yet. This is a brand new show. But as you guys know, I love basketball. I talk about basketball a lot on my social media platforms. And so today I just wanted to kind of do a preview before we actually get into the NBA playoffs based on what I think is potentially going to happen. Now, in the future, there will be a co host joining me. My man Jamie will be joining me. And we wanted to really just talk about playoff basketball in general for this show, but we just schedules couldn't align, and so I wanted to drop something at least before we tip off here at 1:30. So the first thing that I want to talk about is recapping the bubble. For me, I've heard a lot of people talk, and just watching some of the shows on this morning, I heard a lot about the debate for the bubble MVP. I don't think that there was a debate. Yes, you could say it was possible that it could have went one way or another way, but I think that it was obvious that Dame Lillard was the MVP. You look how he played down the stretch. I mean, this guy was dropping 50 and 60 like it was no one else's business. And although the Suns, I did feel so. One thing that I will say is I feel like the Suns should have been allowed to play in the play-in game because they went down there, they won 8 games, and they were undefeated. But the thing is, a lot of people point to, well, they should have done that before the season. You have to realize that there wasn't that much of a lead between any of these teams when the season was going on. And you have to also realize that that whole rest of the season was essentially condensed into these last 8 games. There's not much that Phoenix really could have done before this happened to really change that. And you also have to account for the fact that DeAndre Ayton was out. So they really did not have their full team together. Now, Portland was in the same situation. However, they ended up getting Melo. They ended up, making somewhat of a run right before COVID really ended everything. And that was really the difference maker. So to me, in my eyes, I feel like the two teams that should have been the Blazers and the Suns. I think that would have essentially been a solid matchup. But given the circumstances, it is what it is. But for me, I think that it was pretty obvious that it was Dame Lillard, given that everything was on the line, given that he won the game to essentially cement his Blazers being in over the Suns. You really had to give it to him, and that was really the defining moment for them. And so I get why some people would say, and maybe it could have been a co-MVP thing. It's really hard for me to say. It really is. But I think the fact that he played as well as he did, and the Suns, there was nothing that the Suns could have done outside of what they did, right? They went 8-0. Dev Booker played out of his mind. He definitely did have clutch moments and did, play against everyone that was pretty much there that was notable when we talk about the Clippers and some of the other teams that they played. So I could see the argument. Right. I don't think that it's insane for people to say, hey, Dev Booker deserved some credit. And I think that he will get some credit. But then you also had guys like TJ Warren and stuff like that. But when you look at the bubble itself, I think it was a huge success because these guys being away from their families, only being able to play basketball, no distractions, were able to tap in. And you really saw a high quality version of basketball being played. And I really have to salute Adam Silver and all of those guys out there. I want to talk about my top 10 because it kind of made some major headlines and definitely got the people talking. And I just want to explain where the logic and all of that came from. Now, that doesn't mean to say that it's right. I'm never going to say that, all of my takes are, 100% right, bulletproof, or that anybody's takes are. But when I talked about it, I was really coming from the standpoint of pre-bubble, right? Where I would really look at what was going on in terms of certain players. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull it up here to go ahead and go through my top 10. And there's other takes that I had that you guys who have been following me on my social media know that I have. And I'll get into those a little bit later. I'm really going to try to reserve that for when Jamie comes on because I really respect Jamie's basketball mind when it comes to that stuff. But I'm pulling it up here. Okay, so I have since changed this. But before, I think this was on August 2nd, I said that my top 10 NBA players, in my opinion, right now, and this was kind of based off of when all players are healthy, the number of rings in their career, where they've been to so far, and then also their skill set. And so when I started off, I said LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, Steph Curry, James Harden, Giannis, Anthony Davis, Luka, Kyrie, and Zion. Now, when I get to my honorable mention, the very first player that I mentioned in it was Dame Lillard. Then I went on to say Ja Morant, Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, Russell Westbrook, Paul George, Trae Young. Now, just to give you some thought, like this number 10 spot, don't get it twisted. It was hard for me to make this decision, and it was based off of literally like what I had seen so far. So most people said, why don't you have Dame Lillard in your top 10? And they were right. Dame Lillard deserved to be in the top 10. But at the time, the mind frame that I was coming from was I watched a lot of Dame Lillard and just a lot of basketball in general last year in the playoffs. This was something that, if you're familiar with props and stuff like that, you have to predict what people are going to score and scoring output. So I watched a lot of basketball. And so for me, my reason behind not having Dame in the top 10 originally was because in the big moments, like last season in the Western Conference Finals, he didn't come to play. And even after that, I still gave him the benefit of the doubt. Like, even though you got swept to a KD-less Warriors team, I still gave him the benefit of the doubt. I'm expecting, like, to me, last year started a transcendent spot in Dame's career. Like, he elevated himself to superstar status, I feel like, based off of those series that he had against the Thunder, against, I believe, the Nuggets as well, to get to the Western Conference Finals. That was a close one too. I think that is what transcended him to another level. So I'm like, when you do that, my expectations rise for you. And when I say expectations, I'm not even talking about rings or anything like that. I'm talking about you're a lock to make the playoffs. Like, to me, it's a lock. It shouldn't be a question of whether or not you're going to make the playoffs or not. That's where I was coming from with the Dame thing. And that's why he wasn't in my top 10 initially was, after your biggest accomplishments in your career thus far, you're struggling to make the playoffs. And I think a lot of people forgot how bad the Blazers really started off the season. Now, he was hurt at some points, but they were just bad at the beginning of the season. Like, a lot of people forget that they had to sign Melo because they were playing so bad. But that's where I was coming from. And when it came to Zion, what I was going off of was based on the ascension that Zion was having coming into the bubble. Like, you have to remember, he was dropping 34 on the Lakers, and he was just looking like this unstoppable force where a lot of people were saying, is he going to be the next guy? Is he a star now? And the Pelicans were also in that race. So for me, like, I was thinking this was going to continue going into the bubble. Now, certain things happened and Zion didn't get the playing time that he really deserved, but he was truly ascending coming into that. Because remember, a lot of people were saying, is Ja still the rookie of the year? Does he still deserve that? Or is it now Zion? And nobody knew what to do with Zion. Like, we had never seen a Zion before. Like, there's only one Zion in the NBA. And I'm not trying to say that there's more than one Dame Lillard, because there's not. But at the time, it was like, this guy is, scoring a lot. There's no one able to really stop him. When you get him in the paint, he has his strength. He's rebounding. And then he wasn't a slouch on defense either. So it was like, how can you really, really stop this guy? So essentially, that's where I was going. And it was really more of a future pick because I saw Zion trending up, but I did not like what I saw from the Pelicans. And so that's why I made the adjustment within, I think, a week later, once the game started playing and we started seeing that Zion wasn't actually playing. And when he did play, he wasn't playing very good. He wasn't in the best shape, it looked like to me. So that's when I made the adjustment to put in Dame Lillard, because Dame was just going ham. Dame was just going crazy. And so for me, it's really hard when it gets to this, because you got guys like Russell Westbrook, who has multiple MVPs. You have guys like Joel Embiid, who's great, but just, can't stay healthy. But he has been pretty far in the finals, and he was more competitive. I mean, when you talk about the Eastern Conference Finals last year, 76ers Bucks, they were just there. I mean, that game comes down to one shot from Kawhi. So it was a hard choice to make. Like, I mean, you even got Jokic in there. Like, there's some players in there, but I would definitely put Dame at the top of that class. So that's why I put Dame back in there. I switched him out with Zion for my top 10. But with that being said, let's talk about what is going on with the upcoming rounds and how I see those playing out. So the first matchup at 1:30 is going to be against the Utah Jazz and the Denver Nuggets. Now, I'm really big on the Denver Nuggets. I think a lot of people are sleeping on the Denver Nuggets. They are a very good team. Nikola Jokic is a superstar. I think a lot of people, if you haven't known that, look into his numbers. He is a star. I got a lot of people saying that Jokic should have been in my top 10 NBA players as well, and I have to agree with them. I mean, that's a solid argument. He is a star. The most slept-on star for the Denver Nuggets that I found out last year playing props is Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray is a very good Robin for them, and he's a guy that I'm excited to see play because he played at high levels in the playoffs last year. I think there was one game where he went off for like 30 against Dame and CJ. And so when you look at those teams, it's somewhat of – I almost want to say it's somewhat of a mismatch, especially with Michael Conley being out this first game. I believe he's going to miss it because of the birth of his son. So, I mean, that's understandable. I mean, sports are here, but family is up here, especially. But I think when you look at it, when you look at the teams, you got Jamal Murray, you got Jokic. So they match up with, those guys over in Utah very well. I mean, you've got some guys over at Utah. Do not get me wrong. You got Donovan Mitchell, who's, an ascending star. He's getting ready to move up to the next level. And I think that he's going to come to play, but he's not going to have as much firepower as the Nuggets have, because the Nuggets also have my guy, Michael Porter Jr. A lot of people slept on him. When Michael Porter Jr. came out, he was compared to Tracy McGrady. He was considered the best player or prospect from that class. He just had a lot of injuries, and he came in, pretty much had a red shirt rookie year for the most part, and then this year he finally gets a chance to come in and do his thing, and now he's really ascending to what we thought he was going to be, coming off of 30-point games and stuff like that. So that's another guy to have. And then we all know about Bol. Similar situation, which is crazy because it's like almost the same situation. He came in hurt. He had to work his way back. And the bubble essentially gave them more time to get these guys back in shape and healthy and cleared to play. Because if the bubble doesn't happen, I don't even think that we're seeing these guys play. And you have to remember that this was a team that almost went to the Western Conference Finals without them. So they are a very good team. You also have Will Barton, who I think is also slept on. He's an underrated player, but you got some solid pieces there. You talk about Paul Millsap. That's another guy that's a pretty good player. Jeremy Grant and other guys that they have there. So they've got the team, and they've got the better team, in my opinion, when it comes to them and the Jazz. Now, I could see this being a close one if Conley was there from day one. Like I said, I don't think he's going to play in the first game. But when you look at the Jazz, they also have Jordan Clarkson, who's a great scorer. He can put up points in bunches. You got Rudy Gobert. This is a guy defensively that has won essentially the Defensive Player of the Year. You got Joe Ingles. I mean, you got some guys, Bohan, they've got some players. Don't sleep on them either. But I think that the Nuggets are going to take this in 6. And the Nuggets are the team, in my opinion, that you got to keep an eye on when it comes to this playoff series. Like, they could upset some people. Like, I've saw some pretty big upsets going around. They're one of those teams. And then that brings me to the next game, the Nets and the Raptors. This, for me, is a clean sweep for the Raptors, and I'm going to tell you why. Yes, the Brooklyn Nets are good. They're very good without Kyrie, KD, Dinwiddie even playing. They've had some emerging stars with Karis LeVert, and they are playing well. Their coach is coaching them very well, and I think that the coaching in this series is definitely going to be on display. Nick Nurse versus the coach of Brooklyn. His name escapes me at the moment, but he's a good coach as well. That's what it's going to come down to. But I think the fact that the Raptors are just really on a mission to prove that they can win without Kawhi and they can make it to the finals without Kawhi is just going to make the Nets kind of a team that's just standing in their way, that they really just want to bowl over. So out of all of the games that I'm seeing on this first day, In terms of the matchups, I think that this is one of the matchups in this series that could end up in a sweep with the Raptors rolling over them. So I won't spend much time on that one. Let's get into the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers. And I feel like the air was let out of this one when Ben Simmons sustained that injury. So obviously it doesn't seem like Ben Simmons is going to play in this game. But I think that this will still be somewhat competitive. I think Joel Embiid is going to eat. So I think if you're looking at the props on him for scoring, I think that you try to take the over because he is going to be a monster in this game. And now hopefully he can stay healthy and play, but they absolutely have no one that can guard Embiid in the post, and he's going to really have to dominate. And this is a big statement for his career because, when I talk about him not being in my top 10, this could be a moment where he enters that top 10 based off of how he plays in this series. If it's like let's just say hypothetically, Joel Embiid is able to force this to game 7, but he still loses. That would be admirable based off of what we have right here. Ben Simmons, don't get me wrong, is a star. He's the second best player on that team, and not having him there, not having him be able to match up against Kimbo on defense, they are going to sorely miss that. Now, they still have some other players that are there that are going to be able to help Embiid. There'll be somebody that's there that's able to really essentially, act as his Robin there. I don't know who it's going to be, but they have several different young stars that can do that. But I feel like the edge still goes to Boston. You're talking about a Boston team that has had success in the past. Before it was with Kyrie, now it's with Kemba. They're playing a lot better this season. I mean, this has been a good team for the past 3 or 4 years, and I think that experience and that moxie that they have shown, and you talk about Brad Stevens being one of the best young coaches in the NBA, I think that is what's going to give them the advantage. Kemba Walker's going to eat. He's going to eat. With no Ben Simmons in there, he's going to eat. Tatum's going to eat. Brown's going to eat. I mean, you know what the Celtics are going to give you. So for me, I think that the Celtics are going to win this in 6, maybe 5. But I think it definitely favors the Celtics, which brings me to, I think, the juiciest matchup that I want to see, personally, just from a spectator standpoint, is going to be the Dallas Mavericks versus the LA Clippers. I think this is going to be a lot closer than people think, potentially, based off of those stars. But I think where you get that separation is from the bench of the Clippers and the supporting cast of the Clippers being that much stronger than the Dallas Mavericks. But when you look at the 2 stars, I cannot wait to watch this. You talk about Luka Doncic, who's in my top 10. I'm not moving off of that. I don't care. I'm not moving off of Luka being in my top 10. You got Luka Doncic, who also played amazing. And this is a guy that you have to remember has essentially put up like LeBron James type numbers being as young as he is. And then he's also coming in with Kristaps, the 7-footer, the 7-foot assassin who's scoring from everywhere. He's on fire as of late. He's been averaging like 30. So before we got into the bubble, him and Luka were really kind of struggling to get Kristaps going. Now Kristaps is going, and he does not look like he's slowing down. So I would love to see the matchup between those 2 guys versus Kawhi and PG. Are they going to be guarding those guys? I don't know if PG can really guard Kristaps. I don't think Kawhi can either. And people are going to say that that's crazy, but you got to remember Kristaps is like 7 foot, so he's shooting over those guys. So if they do decide to defend those guys that way, who's going to be on who? I'm very interested to see how that dynamic works. But like I said, it comes down to that supporting cast. And I really like Tim Hardaway Jr. and I also like Seth Curry, Steph's brother. But I don't think that they're even in the same realm of the supporting cast that the Clippers have. When you talk about Lou Will, you talk about Reggie coming off the bench. Like, they have so much firepower over there in LA, and they have, other guys like Harold and stuff coming back. Like, they have a lot of firepower. Pat Beverly, like, the Mavericks just can't really match up with that. Now, eventually in the future, I would love to see that. And if Luka can make this, go 7, I think that cements his status in this league. But again, I just think that it's a tall order to expect the Dallas Mavericks to upset the Clippers in the first round. So with that being said, I think that is going to be Clips in 6. I really do. And so that really wraps up my matchups for the first round. we'll be back with possibly a day 2 or a more analysis on these games. But that's where I see it. But you guys can already see, if you don't know me, I'm a Lakers fan. Got my Kuz Mania shirt ready. Got the hat out ready. But of course, I'll give all those takes on the Lakers tomorrow. So appreciate you guys for listening, and thanks for coming by. And we're gonna keep bringing this stuff to you. Peace.